asking our pharmacist, I'm like, how much does the current on formulary inhaler cost? And then I asked her, what's the new one cost? And the new one was actually more expensive. Finally, they said, well, because we get a higher rebate on that inhaler. I'm like, but our clients only get $20 regardless of which one. Clinically, they were equivalent, identical. So that's when I was like, that's wrong.
All right, guys. Well, I'm here with Trevor Daer with Granite Peak Analytics. I was going to say Granite Peak RX, and then I would already screwed things up. But how you doing, Trevor?
I'm doing great, Spence. How are you?
Well, great to have you, man. And you're all the way in from Billings, Montana, right?
Yes, sir.
Where the heck is Billings? I don't know. I don't know anything about Montana other than it's supposed to be beautiful in the summer.
It is, yes. So Billings, Montana is like south central Montana. I always say it's the furthest east you want to go in Montana before it kind of just becomes like West Dakota.
Okay, West Dakota.
There. Yeah, like the mountains stop sort of after Billings, and it's plains and sagebrush, which has its own beauty. But
yeah, I can see it's beautiful, but it's probably not really easy.
It's not what people think of when they think of Montana.
Yeah, I think
Montana means mountains.
Big sky. What is it? Big sky, or what is big? What is that?
Big sky country.
Big sky country. Yeah. I was trying to think of it. I've never been. Clearly, a completely naive Texan here.
Yeah.
But is that where you grew up, man? I don't know if that's your home or what.
Yeah, fourth generation Montanan.
Okay.
So I didn't grow up in Billings. I went to college in Billings, and then that's where we started a family. But yeah, I've been in Montana my whole life, and kind of lived the small town life from about fifth grade on. Little town of about 1,500 people in central Montana.
And what do you do in a small town, central Montana, when you're growing up? Is that like a farm life at all? I mean, are you doing anything agriculture or what?
Yeah, I mean, most of it is ag.
Okay.
Right? There's a lot of farms and ranches around. You know, when you grow up in a small town, you just find things to do. Try to stay out of trouble, but, you know, it's like you go on back roads, you hunt, you fish, you know, you work.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what you do. So it's like there's always something going on, and it was cool to grow up there just because of like the sense of community you get in such a small town. Like sports were a big part of my life, and like that's what the whole community kind of rallies around is the high school sports. And things
was that hockey was your sport? I know your kids are into.
No, I didn't know anything about hockey, man. I still really don't. Primarily football was my sport, at least in high school, and then into college. But I was, in a small school, you usually do everything. So I did track and basketball and football, but football was really where I found, I guess.
You had a lot of patches on your letter jacket then, right? If you had all the different sports.
Yeah.
7-sport athlete,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
No, so when you say small town, give me a sense of how small we're talking population-wise, just out of curiosity.
Like 1,500 people, maybe.
Okay.
So, yeah. Really
and then
small.
what is that in relation to like Billings? I know Billings is
like 100,000.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So everything's small there, you know, from a population standpoint. But Billings, I think, still is probably the largest kind of city in quotes.
Okay.
But it's not.
Well, and I don't want to belabor Montana too much, but I'm curious because it's a beautiful place. Like, is it changing now that like a lot of people are, especially with TV shows being shot there and stuff like that? Like, are you getting a lot of city folk or a lot of outsiders moving in? And is Montana still able to keep its identity throughout that growth?
You know, I think it's. Some would say yes, some would say no. I think different pockets, you would say not really. I mean, it's really changing. There are some places where, you know, most Montanans can't even afford to live there. Like they couldn't even afford to buy a house there because it's just it's always sort of been like that just because, you know, when people want to get out of the rat race, they look at places to go, and Montana's just a place that a lot of people are like, yeah, the simple life. But there's definitely some communities that have been, I don't want to say taken over, but really, you know, influx of a ton of people driving up housing prices and things like that. So I still
not
think
one of those like grumpy like Montanans though, or like you're not.
No.
We have this in Texas a little bit, right? We got an influx of West Coast, and you know whether that's Portland or whether it's people from LA, right? But they're kind of seeking the same thing, a different. I'd say different outcome than going to move to Montana for different reasons, but they're seeking a different quality of life or a pace of life or space, so I totally get it. It is a struggle sometimes to find that balance of maintaining the identity of the location that they're moving to when there's such an influx of people from outside. But then it ends up finding a balance eventually over time, even if the locals get a little bit grumpy. It doesn't sound like you quite have that.
No,
mentality.
I'm not like the grumpy old Montanan. But there are times where you're just like, you want to say like, no, we're full. We're good.
Yeah. Just for a little bit. Just give us a couple years.
Give us a couple years to catch up or, make some things more affordable. But all in all, like, people are people.
Yeah.
Regardless of where they're from. So I think that's one thing why people keep moving there is we're pretty welcoming.
Cool, man.
So
well, I'm gonna have to come check it out, and maybe we're gonna do Maker's Mind 2.0 in Montana in the summer. But so let's get into a little bit of the pharmacy consulting world. I suspect there's a couple steps in between college and Billings and Granite Peak Analytics. So how did you find your career ultimately in this space?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I feel very fortunate. Right out of college. With my environmental science degree, I thought I was going to go work for like the Forest Service or I don't know what they call it in Texas. We call it fish and game, but some people call it game and fish. I thought that's what I was going to do. And I graduated college on a Sunday, and my daughter was born on a Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
Like that Tuesday.
Wow.
So it was like, hey, man, grow up.
Yeah.
Get a job. Do all the things. And I was fortunate that my in-laws had a third-party administrator business.
Oh, really?
So that's how I got into self-funding. And they let me have about 3 months to kind of try and figure out my own way and try and get my, get a job. And I couldn't get one. Like I applied everywhere. And I was like, well, if nothing else, I'll just go work at like a fast food restaurant or something. And I walked in one day. We were just, my wife and I were bringing our daughter in to see their grandparents. And my father-in-law was like, hey, we might have an opening for you. I'm like, okay.
Did you have any idea what a TPA was?
No.
A third-party administrator? So
No.
what did you think they did at that time?
I had no idea.
Okay.
I just knew they were like very successful business owners. And whenever like they would kind of tell me about it, I'm like, I still don't get it. And so I had no idea. And they had an assistant account manager position open, which was basically like, you come in, you support the account managers, account executives in their work with brokers and clients, but you're not right out on the front lines, right? You're not like doing open enrollment presentations. You're just more of a support position. What was awesome about that is I got to learn without like being thrown into it, right? It was like just kind of step by step, like, okay, what is stop loss? How does that work? And honestly, it took me maybe not the quickest learner, but it took me a few months to even figure out how does a third-party administrator get paid? Like that was always my question. Like my first question was like, what's a broker?
Yeah.
And my second one was, because I never experienced any type of broker.
Well, I can imagine coming into that. Working for a TPA straight out of college that's a pretty sophisticated component of a self-funded plan. It's not like you went to go sell life insurance, and nothing to diminish life insurance, but that's a pretty straightforward product. You learn the jargon and you can go sell it. A third-party administrator is sort of the hub for everything. Self-funding. So you have so many other things that you have to have context for that you don't have any frame of reference for to start. So I imagine the learning curve was a lot longer than maybe somebody with a little background in insurance. So was there a point in time where you felt, oh, I think I get it now? Was that 6 months in, a year in?
It was about a year.
It was about a year. Okay, I think that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a year when everything kind of clicked and went, oh, that's why we do that, and this is how this fits together.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Is the why that is when everything comes together. You might go, well, if this happens, I click this button, right? That's an algorithm, right? You go, but wait, why if that happens, do I do that? And why does this trigger that?
Right.
That's when I really got self-funding too, is when I understood why the money was flowing where it was. There was the how component, but it was the why that you go, oh, I get it now. And it's really that why that undergirds most of what we do in our career. So you were an assistant account manager to start. Really, what was your daily operations? Like, what are the kinds of things you were doing for that company at that time?
A lot of stuffing ID cards.
Okay.
Like new ID cards, right?
Yeah.
A lot of stop loss reporting. So we'd have a spreadsheet of all our renewals, and we would send out to our carrier list, and then to the brokers who wanted to shop their own. We would send out the 90-day reports, 60-day reports, the pre-cert report, all those things. And so
you really got a crash course into like everything. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel I was lucky to find it when I did, but you found it right away.
Right away.
It's funny too. I think as we were hanging out yesterday, you kind of made the point like, doesn't everybody do this? Isn't everybody self-funded? Right. I could see where coming into the world that you did right away that the presumption was, well, clearly everybody does this because it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Did you have this discovery over time that, oh, actually not everybody does this, and start sort of questioning the industry?
Not until I left.
Oh, not until you left. So what did you do after the TPA world?
So I spent about 10 years in the TPA world.
What was the name of this TPA, if you don't mind?
EBMS.
Oh, yeah. Definitely familiar, yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny is like you don't realize until you get out of it or you see it from a different angle, like the things you were saying and doing, like they just hit differently. Like we used to say we're in the 95th percentile for size of independent TPAs. I thought that was just kind of a sales stick. Mm-hmm. And then I got out and I started prospecting TPAs, and I was like, holy smokes, we really were. Like from a size standpoint and being independent, like we were a big, well-known national TPA, and most TPAs are kind of regional. Yeah. And there's a lot of them. Like I didn't realize there were so many. Like we would just run into competition. So I thought maybe there was like 10 TPAs in the country, and there's hundreds. Yeah. So
what were you doing after that, though? You said you were there for 10 years. What was your next job?
Yeah, so it's probably helpful to, obviously I wasn't an assistant account manager for the full 10 years.
Sure.
So what I ended up doing after about a year and a half and things started to click, I got promoted to an account manager. So I started working directly with the brokers, and I really learned how to provide great service. Yeah. Like everybody talks about it, but I think very few like execute on it. Mm-hmm. Plus I was able to look at like the other account managers and see what they did really well and maybe where their weaknesses were. And I just kind of pulled from all their strengths. And one thing that served me well in life and business is I ask a ton of questions, even like ad nauseum. Like if I don't get it or it's not making sense, I'll just keep asking. And so that's how I learned. And that's how I think I kind of started putting all the pieces together. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. And that's why I encourage a lot of people when they start in this business, or, when we're hiring people, I'm like, ask as many questions as you want, because that's how you're going to learn these things.
Well, I mean, I think about my 2-year-old. He's building a model of the world right now, and he's in that why phase. But that why phase is when, I actually had a friend of mine the other day mentions like, Bash is really, he's coming online. There's this moment in children's lives where like all of a sudden their personality bursts out, they start talking, and they just almost don't stop talking. But he's in that discovery phase of the world. So the why question is the most important question for him to ask right now. Right. And you go down these why rabbit holes. So you have to answer why 27 times in a row. And I'm like, I don't know anymore.
Half the time you're like, I don't know.
I don't know, buddy.
I don't know why.
But I think it's good to maintain that level of curiosity in your career. I think it's absolutely true, because now you're starting your life. You are starting with basically zero real world experience in that thing. So if you don't ask why 1,000 times, you're never going to quite get it, right? Yeah. So you were asking why. Obviously, you developed over the course of 10 years. Clearly, you're as a successful business owner now. So were you growing into more of a sales role eventually at that point? Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for 3 main reasons. Number 1, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number 2, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number 3, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information, because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments.
So after about 5 years, we had an on-site clinic division.
Okay.
And we had also created a cost-plus pharmacy.
Really?
So and this is one thing too, like you don't realize how kind of innovative some of those ideas were until you're out and you're like, wow, man, like, we had a cost-plus pharmacy like 15 years before Mark Cuban did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're like, we kind of were ahead of the game. It's just we didn't we weren't quite sure what we had.
Yeah.
And so about 5 years in, after being an account manager, working with brokers and clients, I kind of wanted to specialize because I felt like I was jack of all trades, master of none, because there's so many components, right? And you're like, okay, I know enough about all these to be dangerous, but I don't know one thing really well.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to hyper focus on something, and on-site clinics was that opportunity where it was like, hey, that sector was growing. They needed an account manager to kind of be specific to our on-site clinics.
Okay.
So I did that, and the side component to that was like our cost plus sort of fledgling mail order pharmacy, and then our PBM relationships. And that's what lit the fire. It was like I came across the pharmacy component, and all the whys I asked, I never got a satisfactory answer from like the PBM space. And what really kind of kicked that off was there was, you know, you hear about quarterly formulary changes all the time, right? Which is, you know, medications are going from tier 2 to tier 3 and a higher copay. And that was happening with an inhaler. And we had a pharmacy, so I could ask what the actual price of the medication was. 'Cause back then, pass-through, transparent, like those PBM options didn't really exist.
Okay.
Like it was all spread. It was all traditional model, primarily. And so I just kind of got the PBM stuff because no one else wanted to do it. It was like the clinics were fun and profitable. And the PBM stuff in the pharmacy was like, yeah, if it works, great. But like, that's not where our success is.
Okay.
And so I kind of fell into it. And then the a formulary change came out. And it was for an inhaler. And I asked him, like, well, why are you it came out in this great, like, you know, we're always reviewing these things for clinical appropriateness, cost effectiveness, blah, 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 all these things that you see in the formulary notifications. And I ended up asking our pharmacist, I'm like, how much does the current on formulary inhaler cost? And then I asked her, what's the new one cost? And the new one was actually more expensive. And I can't remember by how much, but it was enough where you're like, hold on. Why are you preferring a more expensive inhaler? So then I went into my why bird mode, right? And I'm like, so I started asking the PBM. And they just kind of like kept dodging the question. And finally they said, well, because we get a higher rebate on that inhaler. And then I looked at what our clients were getting for a rebate, and it was like a flat, you know, back then it was like a flat $20 per brand claim. I'm like, but our clients only get $20 regardless of which one. And I connected the dots finally. I'm like, you're preferring that one because you make more money on it.
Right.
Because the cost actually went up for the patient. The cost went up for the plan.
Yeah.
And there was no offset to the cost. Like it was just there was no clinical, like it wasn't like, oh, this one's way better inhaler.
Yes.
Clinically, they were equivalent, identical. So that's when I was like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like you're actually lying. Like you said you've done all these things and it's, you know, for the right reasons, and I've just proven that that's not true. And then they just like kind of stopped responding to me.
Wasn't it interesting when you actually uncover what you think is a sort of a moral infraction and you're like, well, I can't unsee this.
Yeah.
Like now that I know this, I either have to bury my head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist and go with the flow, or I'm going to draw attention to it and take action against it. So was that one singular moment motivating enough to start you down the path of Granite Peak, or was it a series of events?
It was kind of a series of events, but I kind of just continued to learn more and more about the pharmacy space. And the more I learned, the more mad I got. It was like this, like, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Like, why?
Yeah.
And then it's like you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, this is how it works. And I don't have enough like knowledge to really fix a lot of these things like contractually or with different partners. And what helped us was we had the cost plus pharmacy, and we needed a PBM that really was friendly with it, that didn't care if we had claims going through there, because mail order's typically a profit center for the PBM. So when we started that and we were, you know, working with kind of the traditional model PBMs, they were like, I mean, we'll do it, but we don't like it. And then as that volume started to pick up, they really didn't like it. So we kind of went on a quest to like find a good PBM partner that didn't care if claims went through there because they weren't making money on it. And that's where I started cutting my teeth on like transparent solutions, net cost focused formularies, like that there was a different way. And then we ended up, you know, moving I ended up transitioning and implementing that, like the new PBM that we found.
What was
Which we
the
can
name of
use
that?
names, right?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course. Yeah, yeah.
So Navitus Health Solutions was a PBM out of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I feel like they were kind of like the OGs of pass-through, or the original pass-through before it's kind of been, morphed in the industry. But they didn't care because they're like, we get paid the same whether you fill it at your mail order or fill it at a retail chain.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a really good sales guy there that was like just educated me on like, here's what it means, here's how it works, here's how you can kind of explain it to other brokers and clients, because you're talking about self-funding, which is confusing enough, and then you get like into a hyper niche like pharmacy, and it's not, it has nothing to do about how much you know about it. It's how can you deliver a message and explain it clearly to someone who doesn't know that much about it. And that's where it started, where it's like I started seeing that we could save our clients money, we could save their members money without changing anything other than the PBM.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so that started you on this quest, and I want to make sure that we get a lot of Granite Peak, if you don't mind, because I really want to dig into why a consultant is necessary to almost stack on top of or alongside a PBM. But I do want to at least cover your transition into entrepreneurship, right? Because you told me you had your daughter 2 days after graduating college, right? So you had a lot of momentum from supporting a family behind you and things like that. But I would love to hear, what was the off ramp of being an employee to ultimately becoming a founder of a business? PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. But what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
Yeah, so I eventually like managed our whole prescription kind of program internally and externally. And then some turnover happened in the organization, so I ended up overseeing the entire account management team. And that work, really you just deal with problems. I mean, nobody's coming to you saying, hey, you all are doing a great job. It's like, someone on your team is not happy about X, Y, and Z, or someone just left, so you have to replace the position, or you're flying out to these clients who are frustrated with the service and the errors that have happened. And, 99% of the things were working well, but it's that 1% that I was always spending my time on. And I was flying all over the country to clients and brokers that were mad, and I wasn't home enough. So I always say I wasn't home enough to be like a good dad and husband, and I couldn't work enough to like actually make a difference, I felt like. So I kind of felt like I was failing at everything. And, if you measured it, I probably was. But it was just like, I need to do something different. All of my like stronger relationships were at work and with clients and things like that. And so I kind of had to make a decision, like I need to step back. Well, the off ramp for me was like this kind of up and coming wellness company. And I saw it and I was like, that's my off ramp. Like I never thought I would leave. I thought I'd be there forever. And then I saw this and I'm like, that's different. All the other wellness stuff that, we've looked at, like just never moves the needle, but this is different. And so I jumped, and that ended up falling through.
Oh,
like
really?
I was going to be half owner, and it was really startup. So like they didn't even have financials yet. So I, created financials in QuickBooks and did all these things. And then at the last minute, it fell through. Well, thankfully, the gentleman that operated the Cost Plus Pharmacy, which was a pharmacist, like I handled all the biz dev and transitions and implementations, but you have to have a pharmacist managing a pharmacy. He had created another business to basically pool together buying for independent pharmacies. And he was like, hey, I know that didn't work out, but before you do something else, let me know. I might have a job for you.
Okay.
And I was like, well, it's in pharmacy, and I've got knowledge in pharmacy. It'd kind of be cool to see the other side of pharmacy. But I was this close to becoming a benefits broker. Because in Montana, it's like, what do you do? I'm like, I have all this knowledge and experience
you
that
had
I
very
built.
specialized knowledge too.
And so what do you do? Well, you go, there's a couple other TPAs in Montana you could go work for, but remote work wasn't a thing then. And I wasn't going to move my family. Or you go work for a carrier, or you become a broker. Like those are kind of your options.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of this close to doing that. And my Mike Matovich, who's the pharmacist, he ended up hiring me. So I took like a 25% pay cut, but it was work from home. I had to travel like once a month. And it was just like slowed everything down. And it was a small business, so I got to kind of learn from him as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So long story long, about a year into that, he and I were kind of driving around the state educating like large payers on their PBM choices, or, you know, in my opinion, poor PBM choices. Mm-hmm. And what that was doing to the independent pharmacy market in the state, because we've got 100 independent community pharmacies, but they were all struggling, and there was nothing they could really do. Like when you look at the economics of a true pharmacy and their reimbursement, like they don't really control their reimbursement, and their buying they don't really have a ton of control over either, so they're getting squished.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, with my background and Mike's experience, we can educate these folks and basically say like, hey, did you know that your PBM choice is like may put this community pharmacy out of business, and it's the only healthcare, like we're rural, right? It's like it's the only healthcare within 100 miles. And then I would always say, and by the way, based on my experience, I know that you're probably not getting the best deal for you, because at some point they're like, well, what do I do? Like I pay the PBM to negotiate with the pharmacy, but when you kind of turn around and say, and you're not really getting the best deal for your company or your patients. And they would say, we had no idea. Thank you. What do you want us to do? And like 4 or 5 times we said, well, we just wanted you to be aware. And maybe, when your PBM contract comes up, take it out to bid. Here's a consultant that might be able to help you. And clearly we're not the quickest learners. Like we did that 3, 4 times, and we were coming back one day and we're like, nobody ever does anything with this.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's where the light bulb for Granite Peak Analytics came up. And it was like, we have to do the work for them.
Yeah.
And we have to show them the data. And when we show them the data, then they'll be able to make an educated decision. Then it's not just a conversation. It's like, no, here, we're showing you, like you're overpaying by 20%, and you're putting this pharmacy out of business.
Yeah, so you only really completed half of the sales cycle, right? Which is the initial discovery.
Yeah,
and
we were getting
make them
meetings.
aware of their problem, but it's the then what was still left hanging.
Didn't have anything.
So Granite Peak Analytics was the answer to then what? Like, we will help you solve this.
Yeah.
So did you feel early on, though, you were in a position to actually take that information and turn it into a solution? Did you have the skill set and the relationships to immediately go and solve that problem for them?
What we had was the knowledge, and we had always sort of done like kind of one-off pharmacy benefits consulting, if you will, but with spreadsheets.
Okay.
And so when we started talking about it, and honestly, that's how the company got named Granite Peak, is like we were driving back home, and Mike was like, do you know what the tallest mountain and tallest peak in Montana is? And I'm like lifelong Montanan, right? I pride myself on knowing this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, I don't actually. And he's like, it's Granite Peak. He's like, do you know where it's at? And then I'm really mad because I don't know where it's at. And it's like right next to us as we're driving by and almost home. I'm like, man, how did I not know that? And that was kind of like this parlay into like, I feel like that's how consumers or buyers of healthcare are. Like, they feel like they should know something, but they just don't. Like, nobody's told them, nobody's educated them. So it's kind of this weird parlay into a name that's like, it's not super flashy, but like that's how it came about.
Well, and I actually love the origin story of names because it's always slightly different, right?
Yeah.
Where it was derived from. But I'm wondering, because what you're actually doing is speaking to human behavior a little bit in the psychology of being made aware that over a period of time you maybe been making a mistake, right? You were naive to something you were doing that was costing you money, or you were doing incorrectly. So did you have some people angry a little bit about exposing this issue, or almost like didn't want to believe you that it was as big a problem?
We still have that.
You
Yeah,
still have
I
that
mean,
today.
we
I
still
don't
deal
doubt,
with
I don't
that,
doubt
yeah.
that, right? But so some of this, I'm sure you're providing them assurance, right, that we'll walk you through how to solve this, and
Yep.
you didn't do anything wrong, right? You just didn't
Right,
have
you
all the
didn't know.
information. Yeah.
Or you were misled. That's
Yeah.
usually what it is. Like, you were misled. But yeah, what we didn't have to really create a business, and that's what we needed. I was like, we can consult all day long, but we don't have any way to consume data and then turn it into meaningful, actionable insights. And we can't do that with spreadsheets. Like, I mean, you can, but when you're dealing with large data sets, and I'm no Excel expert, and Mike's a pharmacist, he's like, I can use Excel to like do a budget,
Yeah.
but
Addition and subtraction.
right, yeah. And so the core was like, we had to find a data platform that could consume, and ideally, like, I had been in the TPA space, so I knew about all these different analytics platforms, the Deer Walks of the world and the Springbucks and things like that, but none of them really like had that pharmacy component that was like strong. And honestly, we went down the path with one analytics provider, and it just didn't work out. Like, we were this close to executing a deal, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I felt that it just wasn't going to be the right partnership for us.
Okay.
And primarily because they weren't just providing a data platform, they were also consulting. So we could have run into each other, right? And it was like, then we were trying to figure out, well, whose territory is what? And it got really messy really quick. Well, fortunately, one of the, like a PBM owner actually, who we had worked with in the community pharmacy group, was like, hey, I've got this data provider we've used and they're really good. And so found that, executed a contract in like a week, and we were off.
Cool. Very cool. Well, and so why don't we beat around the bush, and we got about 10, 15 minutes left, Trevor. I wanted you to be able to, in your own words, sort of define what Granite Peak Analytics is, what it does, even what a pharmacy benefit management consultant, right? Like, what's a PBM consultant actually mean? Because I really want to position your business of who you serve and how you serve them. So can you give me that brief summary?
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged on a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'd like to say is we really are that kind of niche pharmacy partner arm for a benefits advisor, because I feel like most benefits advisor brokers are just like I was when I was an account manager. Like, they're the jack of all trades but master of none, and it's impossible to keep up with this industry, right, and know everything about everything. But they do feel like they should be kept up on everything on behalf of their clients, because that's what the clients are paying them to do. And what we found is pharmacy is moving so quickly and changing so rapidly and so overly complex by design that it's like it's impossible for a benefits advisor to kind of keep up on that.
Yeah, totally.
So what we do is we come in and partner with them to give them that layer of expertise that they can trust and know that their clients are in a great pharmacy program, and we're managing and monitoring it, and that's all we do. We're not doing anything else. It's just like we're your pharmacy partner. On the flip side, we can help them win business by exposing things that we've been exposing since day one, which is egregious, tactics by PBMs that are leading to overspend. And I always say, like, I think savings in the PBM world is like such an overused term, because it's like, well, yeah, you can save off of AWP and you can save all these things, but it's about what you spend.
Yeah.
And so we eliminate prescription overspend.
Well, that makes sense. It's like, yeah, my wife sometimes will come home with a pair of shoes or a shirt.
Careful,
like,
careful. You're gonna
I know,
get in
I can't
trouble
say
with
this.
this
I get in
reference.
trouble. It is my wife, and she does do this.
Yeah.
She's like, I saved $20 on this shirt. I'm like, yeah, but how much did you actually spend on that, right? So it's just
Exactly.
And it's not. She's not doing anything wrong. It's sort of the marketing element of savings or discounts. So what you're doing is sort of flipping that or inverting the way that you view these things. It's not how much you saved. Of quote unquote. It's how much you've spent on these things. And I think
100%.
what it sounds like from my perspective, and I understand your world a little bit, is you are providing sort of an objective analysis on what is the current state of the union, what are some options out there that will solve and help you save money. But you're not representing another company. You're not necessarily being paid by somebody else to endorse their contract. It's like,
Right.
I'm just laying it out for you. And now you decide what to do with it. I'll give you some counsel, but objectively, here are the facts, right?
Correct.
Did I do a decent job of summarizing it?
You
Okay.
did, yeah. I mean, and that's candidly what one of our differentiators is we are objective. We get paid by our client, not by the PBMs. Because we're kind of like a GA for PBMs, right?
Yeah.
Because we kind of like, find the right ones for our clients and then negotiate the agreements and then manage them at the claim level. All these things we do, but we never get paid by the PBM to place business with
Yes.
them, which is very different in this world.
Well, it's even different than GAs. I mean,
Right.
stop-loss
Yeah.
GAs get paid overrides
carrier,
and the
yeah.
commission sometimes by the carriers. So you still have to question whether that's objective
Right.
recommendations, right? I think, have you taken it to the level where you can clearly and unequivocally state that we're just providing you the best options we can find, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And I think that is refreshing. I definitely want to say that to you. But give me an example of a couple things that you can do very well on behalf of a consultant for their employer. I want to kind of get down to brass tacks of some,
Yeah.
not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but the most obvious things you do solve for.
Yeah, the quickest thing that we're able to do typically is negotiate a contract on behalf of all of their clients instead of like one 20-page contract for each self-funded case, right?
Okay.
So we can basically group all of their clients together, whether you have 20 clients with 20,000 lives or 10 clients with 1,000 lives, we can group those together into one agreement, leverage the fact that you're not 10, you don't have 10 100 lifers. You have a book of business of 1,000 lives.
Yeah.
Let's use that to negotiate a good deal with good contract terms, and that allows it to be basically easier for your clients, number one, to be a part of the contract, but also number two, for new clients to come in. A lot of brokers and consultants right now have that like fully insured transition, right? And that fully insured transition is a big leap. And there's a lot of paperwork, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you got to sign the stop loss contract. You've got a third party administrator agreement. You've got all these agreements. And then you get a PBM contract that's 20 to 30 pages long. And they're like, I used to just sign on my renewal, right?
Yes, yeah.
So we save some time and energy there by making it easy, where they just sign a joinder to come into the broker's contract essentially.
Well, and what I like you're describing there, and I think I would echo what you're saying about consultants. I think you said it a moment ago, where it's like it's impossible for them to know everything. And I think that's very clear. I mean, it's not just window dressing me saying that. It's like impossible for them to know everything. Yeah. So I think the more sort of our industry accelerates with good solution providers and good partners, I think the more crucial it's going to be for a consultant to be able to parse who are my good trusted partners that I can literally just always go to for this, rather than having to try to find 17 different vendors based on the situation. You're offering, hey, I will give your entire book of business a single contract for them to make sense of. And then it becomes like, oh, Trevor's my guy for PBM Consulting, right? And so I bring in Trevor to help me win business or retain business. I think we're going to see that a lot more and more, where people have to sort of pick their partners and lean into them as heavily as possible, right? Because you're the expert in an area that a consultant cannot possibly be an expert in everything. Well, I love that. So give me a little bit of a current to near future to long-term future state. I want to see what your vision is for Granite Peaks, over the course of your career.
Yeah, I mean, right now we are, we've been in business for 3.5 years. I mean, we're still a very young company. We currently serve 75,000 lives across the country. Primarily our where we do the best work is with MIWAs, third-party administrators, and broker advisors, right? That's kind of our core focus. That's what our experience is in, and where we can really deliver great service and value. Where I see us heading in the future, in near future, is creating and providing a solution to like the spattering of pharmacy solutions that are out there. So like the first thing we do that helps our advisors a ton is I'm like, there's a new PBM that pops up every week, it feels like. So when we're able to go, you don't have to talk to all 30 of them. Even when you go to these conferences, you don't have to talk to all of them. Just ask us. And we'll tell you that we've either worked with them or no, and then we'll do some investigating and save you a ton of time and energy there. So that's valuable. A lot of our clients say, I'm just tired of trying to keep up with flavor of the month in the PBM space, right?
Yeah.
They're all saying the same things and doing it a little bit differently.
But there's also a little fear of missing out, of not
Exactly.
joining with a new shiny PBM,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
So you layer in that sort of, I would say, the filtering mechanism, if you will, on their behalf.
Yeah, exactly. So where I see us going, though, is like specialty pharmacy, in my opinion, and we could spend
Yeah, I feel like I would love to, if we had like another hour, I feel like you and I could fill it pretty easily.
Yeah.
But I don't want to discontinue your thought there, but I kind of lamenting
Yeah.
the fact that we have a time crunch here.
Yeah, so specialty pharmacy is, what is, I think, the greatest risk to self-funding in the industry right now.
Okay.
The specialty specialty pharmacy, used to be 10, 20% of total pharmacy spend. Now it's 50 to 60%.
Wow.
And now pharmacy is 25% of the total healthcare dollar, where before it was like 5. And so people didn't really worry about it. Specialty will blow up your plan, and subsequently, even if it doesn't blow it up in year 1, your stop loss is going to be really tough to get renewed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? So there's all these different components of self-funding as a risk mechanism is great, and you have some ability, right, to have some good years. Like, hey, large hospital claims were down this year. We had a good year. Specialty is not like that. It's like, it's here, it's been here, and it's going to continue to be here, and it's going to get worse. Like, it's just a guarantee. So what we're really focusing on is, hey, instead of having like, let's do this overlay and let's have this overlay and importation here and this vendor here, how do we help streamline that process? Not just the vetting, but the actual operation of it with, who's accountable for what in this ecosystem? Because now you have, a lot of entities so you have a PBM as kind of like this cornerstone, but not all PBMs are going to be willing to do importation. Well, if the client really wants to do importation, but the PBM doesn't, instead of switching out your PBM, how do we help them work together, or just understand
Find
like
carve out or something like that?
What's the carve out look like? And then the trouble with those, right, is like the communication and the integration. So how do we help with that? I think that's going to be kind of our next iteration of, yes, we are experts in pharmacy benefits. We're going to help our advisors. We're going to negotiate best in class contracts. We're going to eliminate overspend. But now operationally, we're going to really like help some of these solutions work well, or find the ones that have done it really well.
Well, and so kind of give me the big picture of healthcare, if you will. I always ask my guests to weigh in on, you mentioned one component that might blow up self-funded plans, and I don't disagree with you. I've seen some of the price tags on some of these drugs, and it's quite frankly pretty scary. The stop-loss carriers are pretty scared about it, what to do. But what about healthcare in general, right? Because what we've just described is an infinitely complex system for one component of healthcare. Then you have 1,000 other components of the healthcare system that are also as complex. So big picture, what is your vantage point of how we sort of right this ship over the course of time?
Man, that's a big question, right?
I always like to leave with a big question, man. There are no wrong answers either, so don't worry about that.
No, I think that there's a lot of movements out there that are positive, but I think we get in our own way sometimes. Like, there's always a bad actor or two that will take advantage of some momentum or some great products and services that work. So big picture healthcare, I think the more that we can just have accountability and kind of pay for performance in kind of every aspect of it, the better off we're going to be. I don't know if we can ever get there.
Yeah.
But within your own niche, you can get there.
Yeah.
Like, you can make a decision to get paid for doing the right thing instead of getting paid more as costs go up.
Yeah.
Or getting paid, on the back end, or a percentage of average wholesale price. We've seen some pretty egregious stuff, and it's like, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. So I think if every kind of component of this infinitely complex system really honed in on their area and said, no, we're going to be more accountable, and we're going to kind of align incentives, I think we could really move forward as a better.
Well, I would agree
system.
with you, man. And one of the reasons I like to have these conversations is, I would definitely piggyback on what you said that, hey, you're not going to individually solve this.
Right.
So knowing that, we can have conversations about the components of healthcare that can be solved. You sort of pick your battles, right? You find what interests you, what intrigues you, what leaves your conscience clear, and go do that, and go do that extremely well, or to the best of your ability. And that's all you really can be responsible and accountable for. But it does start with that individual's recognition of what role they play and where do I want to stand on the side of these certain issues.
Yeah.
And so I think that simplifies people's lives too, being able to make a choice of where am I going to carve out my space.
Right.
No pun intended. No carve outs. But I love that message, man. And I would agree with you, right? If we have 1 million people that wake up and make that choice every day, then we know at scale we'll be able to at least move the needle a little bit. Well, Trevor, I appreciate you joining me, man. Sorry we had a little bit of a shot clock today, but for those that are listening and listen this far, we've got our first ever Maker's Mind here at the Maker's Gym Studios, and we got a couple other folks to get on today. But it's been a pleasure, man. I know this is only the start of our relationship, and thank you again for the travel.
Yeah, we've been trying to get together for a while, and this just ended up perfect.
Finally worked, man.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. We'll have you on again, man. All right.